Frontiers Unchained.
Welcome to Frontiers Unchained, and I'm looking forward to our upcoming episode as we are trying to tackle some of the biggest challenges people face in frontier markets. Banking services we take for granted are not available to a lot of people living in frontier markets. And furthermore, foreign exchange plays a big part in their day-to-day life, as they can lose buying power overnight due to decisions outside the scope of the realm. Crypto can provide a solution by enabling people to take control of their finances, and furthermore enable them to protect their assets in such a ways that were not possible in the past. The first step would be to have an on and off ramp, which enables people to use their own hard-earned currency to get access to crypto. And Canza Finance tries to provide a solution. They leverage systems already in place to enable people to get access to cryptocurrency. Enough said here. Today we're gonna interview one of the co-founders, Honcho, who will tell us a bit more about his journey in crypto, the challenges he faced, and the solutions he tries to provide for these issues that a lot of people have. Looking forward to this conversation. The floor is yours, Honcho. Tell us a bit more about yourself. How did you get started?
So my name is Oyedeji Oluwoye. I was in my Web3 name, I guess is Crypto Honcho. But I was born in Sydney, Australia. My parents were Nigerian immigrants. They went to Australia to do their PhDs. My other older sister and then myself. From there, I spent 12 to 13 years there. Then moved to the US when I was around 13, 14. I dived into that, did my high school, and then dived into university on that side. Towards my last year of high school, I was very. My dad had this book in the house, which is CompTIA and Network Plus. I think it was my brother's book from when he was doing his engineering degree. He said, if you pass this book, you're gonna have a $50,000 career. You can get $50,000 a year. So at that time, you're 17 years old. You're really trying to think about what you want to do next. So I was like, okay, man, it was like a book like this big, but I just dived into it. I started learning about coax cables. All those different old networking topologies and concepts. And then right before I went into my freshman year at university in the United States, I passed that. So I did my Network Plus and got that at 17. And then I dived into a computer science degree. And the following year, before my sophomore year, I got an internship at a network and routing company, which is called Adtran. Really basically builds technologies similar to what Cisco. So they're based in Huntsville, Alabama. And I started just knocking out all the other Cisco certifications, such as CCNA wireless, CCNA security, and then also the CCNA network and routing. So from there, I got accepted into AT&T's network leadership program in Atlanta, Georgia. I did US build-outs for US build-outs and then ATM decommissions from the layer 2 side in the US domestically. And within the AT&T program, it was a rotational program. So then the next 5 to 6 years, I was the Asia Pac capacity manager. So building out the network with enterprise clients within Asia Pac, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Guam, New Zealand, India, Pakistan, etc. So that was really important because during my network engineer or corporate career, I was doing my master's thesis, a computer science master's degree. And I had to pick a topic for that thesis. And since I was doing so much, I felt like I had a very good concepts of the networking, obviously from a day-to-day job. And then as well, I was really learning a lot about finance, the origins of money, going into debt and credit and all these different type of systems that was created a very, very long time ago. And during all my, I dive into rabbit holes and deep dive into any type of research thing. Yes. And then I ended up getting a YouTube, YouTube gives you different suggestions. And it was basically like internet of money. And it was a Bitcoin. And I was just like, yo, like the first time I watched it, I was like, what is this, man? Like, what is this? And I might have heard of Bitcoin, the concepts, maybe a little bit in college, but like not to when I'm like, okay, how does this really come up to money? Because it's a very, if you never heard of it, it's very hard concept to really grab until you really do like some really deep dives into it. So after there, I was like, okay, let me do this as a topic for my master's thesis. And yeah, I did that in fall 2015 and defended in spring 2016. And the real engine and the meat behind it is because my grandma's, it's still, and the majority of my family's still in Nigeria. And it's just like, once I heard about Western Union fees, I was just like, dude, this is a topic. I have to understand this, because I was like, how are these companies making so much money just to transfer, and they can charge so much fees, especially into the regions that need it the most. So yeah, from there, man, just dived into the digital asset ecosystem and space. Got a grant from Zcash Foundation to talk to African American students about privacy fundamentals as well as cryptocurrency 101. So that was like a 5 university tour that we did. Really, really good, because when it comes down to building products, um, you really want to talk and engage with people that don't know what you're talking about, so you can really understand exactly what the end user wants. So at that time, running around in 2017, I was just talking to random students, and like, it was just all about prices, right? That time was really about ICOs, prices going up, or this token, all these different launches and different launch pads, etc.
It was quite an interesting time, but there are a few things I want to unpack a bit more, because you're mentioning a few very interesting things. I mean, first, your early journey, right, towards computer science. You were primarily interested in hardware instead of software, which is quite interesting. A lot of our previous guests were primarily software focused. Maybe you can dive a bit more into that. Why were you first interested in hardware?
No, that's really great. I like how you dissecting this. No, that's really great. Yeah, because like literally just because I'll be very honest with you, man. Like at that time, software, when I was around 21, even when I did my computer science degree, it was like, it wasn't something like, oh, I just want to be on a computer, because you had to spend a lot of time on the computer, right? And then obviously you still want to be in the engineering space. Within Huntsville, Alabama is predominantly more engineering type of city. So they have the US like Army contracts, Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, all those defense contracting companies. So a lot of my friends, and they also have NASA as well. So there's the NASA base in Houston, and there's also NASA base in Huntsville, Alabama. So everything, all my friends, co-ops, internships, were all doing engineering. It wasn't too many hardcore coders. Um, since I started, and once I got into my internship, that's when I started playing much more with and then as well, that was very hardware focused, to be very honest with you. I did it's called quality assurance, and then I did device management testing as well. So all the fundamentals at that time I really had was around hardware. I think a really good point that's now you're making me really think is when. So I did my master's degree. I started at Georgia Tech. So they had an online master's, and then they had this agreement with AT&T. So I was a part of the first program for online. They had a class that I took there before I transferred to A&M, because I was more research focused. My dad's a PhD holder, etc. So that really just was like rolled over onto me. Um, they had a class that I took with software defined networking. So once I did that, I was like, oh, okay, I already had all this hardware experience, but then now I'm taking all these hardware concepts and the pings and these basically virtual routers now, and then putting them into Python scripts, and then we'll like just creating all these virtual environments on top of like VMware, etc. So then I think that was like one of these first building blocks in my brain of like, okay, everything's going software, and anything like if you're a corporate, like, for the last 10 years, everything's like cloud, cloud, cloud. Learn your engineering, learn software, do computer science. So it was much more like getting out of like engineering degrees and engineering management degrees. If that was a path for you, fine. But the skills of how they wanted you to basically, onboard new skills was all computer science driven. So, like I said, I did all those computer science classes. It wasn't like the first things. Like I never was like I'm not a hacker. Like I didn't start off like 5 years old trying to get into terminals. But I think the software defined networking class that I took at Georgia Tech, part of my master's degree, I think that was a really good turning point of understanding. And then Python's such an easy language to me. It was very good for scripting, and you can build spiders and web crawlers, etc. Beautiful soup packages.
And if you look back now, would you say like starting at hardware and then actually moving into software is much easier, or would you do it maybe the other way around if you would start now?
That's a really great question. That's a really great question. Yeah, I think starting from hardware to software, probably because then you're understanding what you're building for. When you actually understand the backbone and really, because you there's always going to be a physical component to the basically the like the you could call the OSI layer, whatever it is. It's going to be a physical layer there that you're building for. So to really understand the topologies from that viewpoint, I think is very crucial.
Yeah, that's quite interesting that you say that, because if we move forward in the conversation regarding Bitcoin, how to actually mine Bitcoin, or how to, with AI now, how to have different chips and stuff. And all these features are all based, hardware is the underlying layer to it. And a lot of people don't understand that, which is very interesting, because eventually it's such an important part of it.
I was going to say, I'll touch upon it because my thesis, even though I did the network, it was like the network, the research on the network infrastructure of the Bitcoin ecosystem. And I just built like a software tool connecting longitude and latitudes for all Bitcoin ATMs. And then I was just pointing that out because there was no applications then. So literally that software application was tailored towards hardware equipment within the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it's good that you actually brought that up. Yeah.
Because then we move to your university days, right? You study in the US, as you said yourself. If you look back now, what are the most important things you learned during your studies, and would you do it again?
Oh, yeah, 1,000%, 1,000%. Yeah, I'm in in a family full of academia, so I didn't even think I have a choice. But I think the most important things is this is just like there's no I in team. I think towards my junior year and senior year, there was a lot of classes like software engineering and all the senior projects, etc. And the teachers were always pushing team, right? Form the team of three, form the team of four. Understanding the concepts of basically even the fundamentals of project management, right? And then making sure you can do all the UML diagrams, etc. So I think that was a really, really powerful concept because, like, once you get into corporate, you're working with teams. You're working with teams, and even now, even in a decentralized or GitHub, etc. You can do it independently, but like you're getting that from, or you're interacting with somebody, different open source code. So I think that team aspect is very crucial. I think it's a fundamental of life as well. You just can't do everything by yourself.
I think that's a very strong point that you make, right? Teamwork is really, really important part of building something. You can't go at it alone, although it feels like you can do everything alone. It's not efficient, and there's always somebody who can do something better. If it's front end, back end, or anything like that, there's always finding the right people around you. And how did you do that during university days? What kind of group of people did you interact with? Were it primarily programmers? Were it all crypto maxis?
No, university days. Undergrad is just social clubs, etc. There's a concept in the US. I'm part of. My cousin brought me in. I'm part of a fraternity. I had no idea because I was growing up in Australia, right? And then he brings me to this US system. So I learned that. So like just the different groups on there. I think especially if you're doing an online master's degree, there are so many groups that you have to do independently and you have to work. So within the master's level is really like talking to multiple people in your classes, trying to get subclasses or subgroups and meet like twice during the week, just so we can get the different courses and material done. But when I have to be very, very honest, when it came to the independent study and the thesis aspect, when you're diving into that, man, especially in 2015, man, that crypto stuff was just Reddit, message boards that don't talk back to you. No one has a name. Like it's very hard to get. I wish I had an oracle. I wish I had an oracle so I can filter out the source of information. But like literally, it was such hard concepts to learn by myself. But like since I was so interested, it was just so I don't know. If you really enjoy to learn, this is the space for you because it's nonstop learning. It's nonstop learning. Like I think from 2015 to now, it's like three different bullish cycles or cycles and different type of things. It's like I don't know. I feel like 99 inside, right? and just and just physically this age. So I think that's literally it. But at the early beginnings of crypto, it was but yeah, it was really cool groups. Nice to meet people. Passionate people. The ones that are really cared about the space and they're still around me now, right? And the people that weren't really here for I don't know whatever reasons, they're not really in the cycle. So it's really interesting.
And that's actually a nice bridge to your first moves into the crypto space, because you were reading about monetary policy, you're reading what's fiat and all these interesting stuff from the economic side while you're doing a software engineer. What was the first thing you did when you get interested into this economics kind of items?
So in corporate, like you have these different things like 401ks, etc. And like even in university, when I look back at it now, like the things that you really want you to prepare, they can give you the fundamentals, but they're not really diving into the finance, like the real finance. I'll be very honest with you. Since my parents are African, I didn't really take like I never used credit cards and things like that, right? So building credit. So first time I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, I didn't even have a credit, but I'm like, yo, I bought my my own graduation gift to myself. I bought like a nice car for myself. And I'm like, I'm doing everything right. I got a corporate job, but then they're like, yo, you don't even have credit history. I was just like, what's going on here? So I think like just learning financial literacy altogether, that was it. But though even now, 2023, like there's still constant some learning. Like it's all these advanced, derivatives, synthetics, all these advanced like type of contracts. But I think that was just the first step, just like how the origins started. I think history of anything is very important because you can only really like go forward once you understand the past, and then you can really like put upon those building bricks. But yeah, it's just like this understanding the debit and credit systems. Big thing that we do on our side is just like localization of infrastructure. The internet's global, and I think I learned that a lot within managing Asia Pac. Just being the different time zones. I'm on US time, but then I'm waking up to service delivery teams that's delivering cables in Ho Chi Minh City, and things like that. So it's just it's just these moving parts, but just understanding we're all global, it's all connected, and as well as the fundamental infrastructure is the same, but the local part is different. So if you can navigate the local infrastructure and the local ecosystems, then you can really add to that connectivity layer globally.
And that what you just said there is such a strong point about blockchain, and also with all the open source code being out there, that you can basically use code what people are building in Europe, in the US, in South America. Nice concepts you see. You can literally take the code and make an MVP in your own local market, and thereby you always have this very strong code base which you can use and you can alter it. So thereby the world is really turning into something global, and I think that's something a lot of people haven't grasped yet, especially in the African but also primarily frontier market. And that's something I think personally which is going to evolve in the coming years, that younger people who have connection to the internet will use that code base and make their own local products. And in addition to that, it's also interesting to see that there's so much knowledge out there on the internet, right? Nobody knows exactly. You don't learn everything in the university, right? If you have a very specific question or specific thing you want to build, you find probably more information on the internet than you do in any study books, because they're not relevant. Things are moving so fast; it's really hard to grasp by, and that also offers opportunity, because things move so fast. It's really hard for people who are already in the business to follow the track. And even for me in crypto, I went on holiday, and 3 weeks later, a lot of other things evolved. So
Yeah, 1,000%, man. 1,000%. I agree with that 100%, man. For real.
so so if you get back, if you, so you're interested in crypto now, you learned some concepts. What did you do? Did you start building immediately, or were you primarily investing? Or
So yeah, okay, cool. So 2015ish, for like the thesis, I was doing the things, researching ATM machines, use some code base pertaining to geofencing to do locations of just information that can go directly to the end users on their cell phones about once they get into that geographical region. And I was just putting in like Bitcoin prices and things like that. So, you walk past the store, you walk past the ATM, you can understand the price and you can keep moving. Um, I think I bought my first Bitcoin. I think it was $424 from Coinbase at that time, and yeah, that was the first transaction. And literally, I just bought one because I wanted to basically test the scarcity basically theory at that time, because in May 2016. May 2016. I think the blockchain halving came in June 2016. So I bought it in May, and then I was like, "Oh wow, we went from $424 to $600." I'm like, "Oh man, this is good. This is some good stuff here." So I was like, "Yo, man, I made like a couple $100 there," and I was just from there, and then I had a couple of I bought ETH that I think is in 2016 as well. And so yeah, it literally started from the academia aspect and just testing it, understanding the concepts. And then obviously I just want to like the fundamentals, like it's talking about all these cryptographic hashes and things. So like I was like, okay, cool. Can I get my hash? Right? Like you want to have your wallet you have your hash, you want to see it on, a blockchain explorer or whatever it is, or .com, whatever, all those different type of explorers at the time, and just see that interactions. Because when you're diving into that, you want to, especially those Bitcoin fundamentals, you're seeing like the scripts and releases and all the time locks and all these other things. So you just want to play around within the actual topology itself and the technology. So yeah, that was it from that side. And then yeah, like I said, I just started diving in from the education and academia side, and I think that's a really strong point when I really look back on the journey. It seems like I read this book. Um, it was by Nathan Proper. Nathan Proper. It was called the what is it? It's black and art. It's black and bronze. The oh, man, sorry, man, slipping my head. It's but it's like actually hold on. It was Nathan Proper, and it was like the original book about Bitcoin, and I was just in love with the the first movers and shakers, right? The founder of the Bitcoin Vault stuff, and I think he sold it in like Switzerland. He was Argentinian. Like the Winklevoss twins at that point. Understanding the story of Brian Armstrong and the founder of blockchain.com. Like just all those original stories and just being in that mix. Like it was like a really good narrative and then I was just like, man, I just want to be a part. Like I just want to be involved. And yeah, so between those moving parts, that was it. And I just started, like I said, the Zcash meetups and the fundamentals that was really getting the ball rolling. My corporate AT&T, my corporate job, they had like an internal Shark Tank thing. So myself and my co-founder is also part of that, my network engineering class in 2013. We basically was like, yo, man, just Ripple is a very good use case. How maybe we can be, because I'm seeing all the technology from my side, from the global engineering team. How can we build something around that cloud? Because we have the network infrastructure in globally in Mexico, and then we have the physical store locations as well in the US. So we created this basically proof of concept and proposal on MVP, and then we won a social impact award from all the directors and VPs from AT&T and Time Warner and DirecTV on that side. So that was a really big point, because that's, you're talking to enterprise businesses, you're doing product projections that are in the hundreds of millions of dollars, and you're doing all these different like data pertaining to the network engineering aspect and the physical storefront.
Can we maybe dive a bit more into that? Like, what was the use case you were building?
Yeah, so basically, it was just the original use case from a master's thesis about the reminiscence, international cross border transfers. There's something that I was, in my engineering job, there was something like the cross border network connecting. So if I were to build out a new gigabit link in India, we'll also do cross border with the telcos in Pakistan. So I was like, oh man, this is because if the packets are moving like this, the money can move like that. So it's just like and I always said the internet was always it's not going to discriminate against finance. So yeah, so my team physically we acquired a Mexican telco, AT&T, where I was working, and I was like, this is a very interesting concept. So now Hispanic basically customers. Imagine if you're in Mexico, in Cancun or Mexico City, you can now go into a store there and pay for your bills in the US and vice versa, because the highest Hispanic is also in Dallas as well, where the AT&T headquarters is, as well as Atlanta, Georgia as well. So it was a really good just diving into and understanding the real use cases at that point, and understanding once you have the network infrastructure and you have the physical infrastructure, you can then basically have your own like cloud service or different things. And like I said, Stellar and Ripple were really big at that time, like really big at that time. And that was it was a very good concept to grasp, at least use cases from an enterprise level and an institutional aspect.
That's very interesting what you said there, because you now again approach from a hardware dimension. Let's say that you actually have the hardware, or let's see, the assets to transfer to use by telcos, and then you use that or leverage the blockchain basically to transfer money funds basically from one country to another. That's interesting, because that's actually a nice angle for enterprise who do have the hardware to leverage that and get a higher return basically.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a very good like cost effective aspect. And like I said, once you won that social impact award, it moved into AT&T Labs. But then after that, then did a couple follow-ups and understanding like the MVP and where it left off, but I was really then just gun-ho into like, how do we bring this to Africa, man? How do we bring this to the continent? And how do, get to the sleeping giants?
And that's a very nice bridge, right, to Canza Finance. Maybe you can tell first a bit more what you guys do at Canza, and then we will get more in like how you got inspired. And
Okay, yeah. So basically, we're just on the mission is to connect decentralized finance and all the concepts within the DeFi ecosystem, really with traditional finance ecosystem. And that mission is broad, but I think we have the right builders and everybody on the team to really get that moving. We really build around local FX agents when it comes to our TradFi offerings. Understanding the parallel markets, understanding the secondary markets and the local market players within the African continent and building tools around them. And then within the DeFi, basically offers is just bringing those advanced concepts from, the DeFi ecosystem, the lending and borrowing and liquidity provisioning, etc., into a decentralized aspect to create value for different parts that we see or different holes that we see within the African continent.
yeah, that's interesting. But let's break it down in like a few steps because I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, to summarize what you just said. So basically, you already have like a DeFi infrastructure online, which African, well, you use FX brokers, but people in Africa and the continent can basically use that or leverage that to get yields, to buy maybe US Treasury NFTs or to transfer money from A to B, side passing Western Union or any other of those money. Well, yeah, any of those companies. But maybe you can dive a bit more in the different steps and what role does the FX intermediary play basically for the on and off ramp, and maybe you can dive a bit more into that.
Okay, yeah. I'll probably start off from a little bit more on the reverse side. So we started off more on the TradFi aspect. I think the biggest thing within the continent or even crypto in general, and it's still a big concept now, is just the on ramps. I think we touched upon that just a little bit on the terminology. So basically, yeah, just turning my local fiat into digital assets, whatever it is, right? We've seen from the chain analysis reports and all these other different reports, or you can go to Google Trends and look at the top 5 countries. You're going to see Nigeria always on the top of the Google Trends list when it comes towards the word Bitcoin or even Ethereum or different other assets there. So we're literally working within that concept of how do I turn my fiat into crypto. So we started from our FX agents on the ground in the city in Nigeria, and then we started ramping up there for just that basic NGN into USDT or whatever different other crypto that we're getting across the desk, or the different quotes and those orders. And then from there, and learning that at the fundamental step, we were to understand, okay, how now do we use the composability from all of our knowledge that we know from Web3 to fill in holes that we see from the FX side and the traditional finance side. So now how can derivatives or options or synthetics or different other FX hedging type of instruments work on and we can basically like we talked about, use the open source code, build around that, create these different variables, etc., by like literally using African assets, or maybe like FX brokers now would say exotic pairs, and then and then like literally build tools around that. So right now that's how it floats. So we started from the traditional aspect of just going with our FX brokers, and then now we're using the DeFi as well. So we're just trying to merge the two to really get and create value for our customers and clients.
Let us just think in how important is what you just said there, right? I mean, having an on off ramp is already a very strong point that a lot of Africans don't have access to, right? I mean, I was in Ethiopia last month, and what I saw there was a very young population with quite a deep internet connectivity. I think it's around 50%, but don't at least in the big cities. And what you see there is the people cannot open a PayPal account, cannot have a credit card, and therefore don't have access to, let's say, an Udemy course to learn something, or to import any assets from different countries in Asia or somewhere else to create something. And that's really holding them back. And I think by having an on-off ramp alone would enable them, maybe in the future, at least if at some point, to have access to those assets much more easier than they currently have within the economic system. And of course, from the FX side, there's also the real exchange rate and the government quoted exchange rate and the real exchange rate that people actually use. So there's a really good or really big discrepancy there, which really hurts the people importing, and they can counter against that if they can on and off ramp their basically African assets themselves, and they can hold that within their own custody. But in addition to that, and that's what you also I think meant with the derivatives and the FX, is that at some point you get some lending, borrowing, you can actually hedge some risk, you can save, you can buy some US Treasury, all permissionless and trustless without having contact with any intermediary, and that's something which will be very strong, because maybe we can dive a bit more into that. We as Africans, they got intermediaries always have played a very hard part in Africa, as there's no trust. It's all legacy institutions, and normally they're quite corrupt in most countries. So thereby, people don't have any trust in them. So by having that DeFi component to it, by having everything trustless, permissionless, and having set the rules of engagement in code, you actually can build that trust again. And yeah, Phil, I hope I summarized what you just said. Otherwise, you can feel free to add.
You hit that. If you hit that on the nugget, you hit that on the head. Literally, and I think that's where I started from, the telco aspect of, your mobile phone number basically being your global passport, and then how can you utilize about build tools around that. I think a lot of those big firms and all those different research firms are kind of from the sector. They put out different reports, like your mobile number is powerful. Mobile money has always been on a massive rise. I think from that 2017, 2016 deep dives and thesis type of research, the only the only thing that I could base it on at that time was the M-Pesa data that was happening in Kenya. So I had to really dive in and understand the mobile penetration, number one, across the continent, which is massively. I think not everyone, majority of people know that, the house phones and all those type of things, like Africa didn't have that built up physically. So I had to skip that and go straight to mobile phones, massive mobile phone, cell phone adoption. So from that, then as well, now we're looking at payments, right? And movement of money. Kenya and East Africa literally had the first type of, real data that you can really understand okay, well, if this is on crypto rails, this can really go over because everyone has a cell phone. So just understanding those two concepts and then building around that, that's the most powerful. But then as well, we've seen the turn in the data from what we've seen within the Chinese market, right? And then like, okay, now I'm understanding the global parts here, and then understanding there's so much difference in investments and capital moving from Asia to Africa. There's a lot of different similarities that you can see there, and then you can really understand and build. But literally, it all starts from the cell phone number, and then as long as you can have that SIM card and you have access to telco, then there should be access to financial products and then financial literacy, etc. So.
And now we discussed the conceptual part, right? How are we looking? How we see, how I envision basically that decentralization or the DeFi working and with an on-off ramp. But from the practical side, how would that work? I mean, you mentioned the currency brokers. Maybe you can walk us through the steps. How that is currently working in Nigeria?
Within Nigeria, and it's also within majority parts of West Africa. With that on and off ramp aspect, then you have to go and dive into cash as well. These are predominantly cash based countries. I think majority even under like 10% of the population pertaining to who have bank accounts, etc. So you can't ignore the cash aspect. But now, if we talk about a more global aspect to now, you obviously the KYC, anti-money laundering laws, etc. Like, but you can build structures around this. So I think that's the parts as well. I think I touched on a little bit earlier when they say I had to learn the local infrastructure within Asia, even regular corporate jobs, but then now within Africa. So to do that, I would have to talk to the people that really know even how to move traditional money on that continent there. So I think that's something that we hold to a lot of value. When it comes towards like even the story aspect, I was traveling to Nigeria every year. My family FX broker was buying some property in Lagos, and then I said, "Hey, you should start looking into Bitcoin." And those were the origins of me even going back to the continent and building something totally, because it just started from WhatsApp. Like we just started messaging on WhatsApp, and then 6 months later, I think 6 to 7 months later, he just kept messaging. He's like, "Deji, I'm hearing about Bitcoin. The thing you told me 6 months ago." I was in Lagos, and I was a massive Litecoin whale at one time. Well, I'm gonna say whale, but I had enough Litecoin very, very, very early on. very, very early on. When GDAX was Coinbase, no, when Coinbase Pro was GDAX. But and then like literally we just stayed into contact, and I just knew that this WhatsApp, and I was like, damn, maybe even WhatsApp. I was building tools around WhatsApp API, like all these little different functionalities because you can just move money. So that was literally the like like a fundamental. And then we have multiple access from that community of FX brokers and currency agents or cash agents on the ground, and they're within Cameroon, they're within Burkina Faso, they're within Senegal, right? So it really just brings the whole global concept, and then you can dive more into the francophone part. You can dive more into the Anglo-speaking regions, and even you have Angola that speaks Portuguese. So like it gets really interesting. But like I think that's been a core fundamental block is to build around that and understand the fundamentals.
Just to nail that, so basically with these with the exchange was are basically exchange traders or like very small banks who trade for the normal people who basically want to have like a local currency or US dollar, and you help them onboard the dollars onto your on chain, basically into crypto.
Just sourcing liquidity for local fiat, and then also sourcing US dollars. That was in the beginning, and then once basically now also creating the USDT pairs against them as well. At that point, it started off from these agents, but then as well from the academia side, myself and my co-founder, like we were like creating proof of concepts because Stella at one point was just trying to work with any type of financial institutions on the continent. So we're building different concepts for within Cameroon, talking to different bankers then. So just getting all these different small and very vital experience points that's really helping us now. But like, because we already created all these drafts and all these workflows at that point, even if some were successful, some weren't. But like, from our side, nothing goes to waste, especially within this space. So just building around that as well.
And talking with all these different people in the African finance space, what was the general attitude towards crypto?
Man, you got me thinking now. This actually really makes sense. So, like, it seems like all that stuff that I was doing with the Zcash and talking, like, you have to come from an education point, right? Like, as soon as I dived into Bitcoin, I was coding. Let me code Bitcoin Flash or something. I just didn't dive. It started like from an educational standpoint. So talking to all these different moving parties because this is just I guess my ethos. Like, you can get it now or you can get it later. Like it's gonna click at some point. So it's good to always network and then build those relationships. But then they can come back around, and that could be different type of deals or opportunities, or not. But either way, I think if you think you're moving within the right direction, you're doing the right thing, then that makes sense. I think as well, like but at the beginning it was multiple. Just like I said, there's agents, right? These are people that we speak English, etc. But then as well, you got to understand these concepts. You're talking now. You're talking about all this code in the cloud, digital thing, and all I do is cash all day. And then what you said earlier, even towards the original Bitcoin white paper, it's all about trust, right? It doesn't matter if it's I don't trust, anonymous, decentralized. As a core thing, either you're trusting the code or you're gonna be trusting people, right? So it's all being about trust. Like even I think you mentioned the aspect about even within Africa, trust is a massive thing. That's the reason why they go to these FX brokers, etc. Because I might even trust these FX brokers much more than I trust my bank accounts because it takes so long for these TradFi accounts to settle, even intra Africa. So you have all these moving parts, but trust is the most key thing. But like I said, it was a mixed. It was always mixed. Even my dad was like, "What are you talking about?" Like it's hard because it depends who you're talking to. But I think what we're seeing now, especially now, these millennials and Gen Zs, etc. You're seeing, from the reports and everything, if I read across the different media outlets, you're gonna see like, okay, Nigeria is always this, or Africa is speeding up the adoption here, and and when now we're moving into an RWA narrative and concepts and use cases, and at the end of the day, the RWA real world asset and the utilization is the stable coins, right? And these stable coins is being most utilized within these countries, right? Within Africa, within Southeast Asia. So, the number one use case, like I think Ethereum, right? We were building ICOs. That was really that massive thing that pumped that 2017 price from $20 to $2,000. So it's like when you have that, but now But if you look at the biggest application on Ethereum, the biggest application has been stablecoins, right? The consistent thing when we look at that bull run from 2017 to now is the market caps for Tether, the market caps for USDC have consistently gone up compared to X project or token or coin. So just understanding those different moving parts, I think that's massive. But like if we're really cranking those numbers and the utilization of actually these things, without, it's not just like, okay, I'm in the UK, I'm trading just with a counterparty. Like, this is real payments, this is real things that you see and businesses need to settle, so we can keep this economy moving. So very interesting.
Yeah, and it all starts, as you said yourself, it all starts with education, right? Once people understand that if you have certain rules of engagement, you put that into code, that can be trust can established by that, right? You don't need to trust somebody else, but the rule of engagement are quite transparent and clear for everybody. So it will be very hard normally for somebody to break the code because the code be executed in one way or the other. Having said that, I think you also mentioned briefly regarding like institutional parties being open but still not accepting it. And maybe we can dive a bit more into that because, yeah, I see a lot of institutions, a lot of central banks in Africa actually banning crypto. I think Nigeria banned Binance and a few other exchanges. Why is that the case, do you think? What's the underlying reasoning behind it? Because if you look at the population, I think the average age or the median age in Africa is between 19 and 21. Can you imagine how young that is? And how internet literate they are. So for these, I mean, for a large part of the population, crypto will be the future, one end or the other, right? It's more like, are you jumping on the train or not? So maybe you can dive a bit more, like why are they hesitant to adopt crypto and educate their own people?
Yeah, I think no, you said that very well. I think that there's multiple different parts. Yes, even within the Binance aspect, I'm still getting much more news on that now. So 100% across the board, because I think there was one company that was registered, and maybe they're not talking in general, but then another report came out. I think the overall though, we're looking at Africa, there's 50 plus countries. We look at the Zimbabwe, that is, they've switched to like that, potential looking to be legal tender. And there's also Central Republic of Africa as well that switched that to be legal tender as well. So and there's massive aspects and work. Binance originally had all that stuff in Uganda. So you got, I think, on the side of the banning aspects, or the parts where people could be a 50-50, there's also the positive sides as well, right? There is legal registration and legislation that is building for the continent. You can go to Mauritius now; they have licenses pertaining to digital assets, right? You have different aspects within crypto licenses that's happening in South Africa. So I think, like I said, with the flip of a coin aspect, there is these things that we see in the news, but then there's also the other 50 where these countries are adopting it. Obviously, we're going to get much more light towards the volume and the economy and things where you can see, and news can come in about Nigeria, etc. But like, that's just one country out of 50. So there's multiple things moving, and a lot of moving parts. I think and all these bands, I'm a build at heart. So I build first. I build first, and then we work within like the aspects of like the legislation, the regulations. But I think I think we really need to keep building. I'm just going to speak from my building aspect. Keep building, because at the end of the day, these things can change, right? And if these products, once you're building a product, and it actually has that real utility and value, it's gonna come through and shine. So I think that's apart from that. But like everything, like you said about the millennials and everything, that's 1,000%. These everybody is sharp. It seems like there's a massive. Even now, I just left Lagos, like literally 2 days ago. I'll be back in like a week. Like there's a massive, like, I don't know how to say it. I don't know if it's narrative, but it seems like everyone's doing a lot of FX. Like anybody, as soon as you have your access to your cell phone, just like even like US dollar, British pound, like a lot of people are talking about FX. So there's a lot of, and the thing is, the national, the the basic, I'd say it's part of the DNA of Africans is trading, right? Like trading goods. Everyone is a natural trader, right? You can take your tomatoes, you can take your cocoa, you can take all these things to the market. So these concepts of market and trading commodities, etc. we're already fundamentally adjusted to that, right? But now it's just going into this transformation of the digital aspect. So these concepts are very, very sharp at. Once we give access to the different internet capabilities, I think that's where we're going to start and basically unlock, the African potential and really come towards, and I think that's the biggest thing for me. I just want to add this is that at 2017, like I was touching these different concepts of like talking to lawyers of, cryptocurrency hedge funds and all these type of concepts. And that was the thing. I was like, how do I bring these, like, no one's talking about creating hedge funds like Africa, and then we're talking about on ramps. So and then I go back to the original Bitcoin thesis, which is just like financial literacy or financial accessibility for all. And I always keep going back to that because within all these building blocks that we built on top of the fundamentals, that white paper is literally like, let's not stray too far away from the financial accessibility, and then instead of just like worrying about these profits, etc. Because all those advanced concepts, Africa can have those. Everything that we see, these market makers, that can be big market maker players within Africa as well. Okay, we've seen the different counterparties in South Africa that's doing massive liquidity and market making. So I think that's the whole thing. I just want, like, if we are going to do a massive reset pertaining to finance, especially in something that we've created from the internet, let's all have an equal playing field. So I think that's as well. I really wanted to touch on that point because it's not for us to be now 10 years or, it's like playing Monopoly and you're playing the board after 20 rounds and then we come back. I think that's how it felt when it comes towards like the regular capitalism or etc. But now with the internet now, if we're one or two boards, okay, but like we're not going to be 20 boards behind or 20 rounds behind. Everyone has the hotels and the greenhouses.
I think just summarizing what you said there, right? I mean, we're gonna probably leapfrog the current financial system, like having traditional banks or having basically a phone line in Africa. Everything went digital immediately, so we're probably gonna leapfrog the whole financial system as it was, and we just immediately gonna start with hopefully with some decentralized, trustless, permissionless system where people can trade with each other. And with such a young population and such a pool of talent and people who can actually now finally having access to internet build and learn themselves and use systems or open source code or systems which are quite successful somewhere else to use it in their own local economy. I think that's a really nice, quite bullish use case for Africa on itself, because the alternative will be that we be using Western Union or using all these old traditional banking systems who take ages to basically deposit funds or do the simplest transactions and ask ridiculous extortion fees. I mean, for everybody who have ever used Western Union, it's quite ridiculous what they ask. And it is like a tax. It's basically like a tax system.
And yeah, and all those institutions now are all adopting digital ledger technology. I don't know if you've seen the latest things, but even MoneyGram has this new product now, MoneyGram Access. You can now they're utilizing Stellar blockchain ecosystem to do USDC settlements. So like you can see how the narrative, and that's what I said about you keep continuing to build because now these institutions and enterprises are using this as a backbone in some type of capacity, private or public. They're still using the fundamentals of this technology.
Yeah.
So at least you can understand it, and we have a fair playing field, a fair field at it. Let's continue to progress.
Yeah, correct. And also what you said there, right? They use it as a backbone. So basically anybody can basically start some kind of bank as long as you can establish trust based on a blockchain where people can see what you are doing with the funds, and it's fully transparent from that end. So that's also something which was not possible in the past, right? You need to have all these regulatory loops in your local economy, and now you can just with internet connections basically start a wallet or MetaMask, receive funds, send them away, and have some kind of bank as long as you can establish trust. Which there's no advice basically, but it's so easy, yeah, so easy to do, right? If you're ambitious and you want to create something. So yeah, having said that, we are nearing the end of the podcast. So some final questions towards you. And what's your long-term vision for Canza Finance?
Yeah, little to be, having that pedigree, having that institutional Web3 coverage towards the African continent, such as like our Asian investors. I think that's literally from my aspect of when we're mentioning these different partners and these different playing fields, African institution or African different companies or startups will be in the same context and pedigree towards our coverage and basically the work we would do. So I think just creating that Web3 institutional basically entity and different product offerings and being basically a Web3 on-chain bank, right? Like that's literally something that we see. There's so much deals that come through about private-public partnerships, and you have RWA where you can create these synthetics against property. You can put all of these deeds on chain. So yeah, just kind of like a Web3 investment bank, and coming in from that side, and obviously the broker dealing and I just think these are things that and concepts that is really good to understand, but then now you can really like understand the innovation. And I think I just want to touch upon that because I had these conversations the last couple of days. When we look at not even just fintech or not technology, the lack of innovation could be in property, it could be anything. It's very small. So maybe a lot of people have to take this concept of this copy and paste, and then there's lack of innovation. So I think this is what when you say when you say like this millennial and these populations, now we're all connected to the internet. I think obviously see much more innovations coming from these countries, right? South America, Southeast Asia, and Africa, and then they could spearhead what we look like and how we build the future. So yeah, same to Canza Finance, it's literally coming towards the Web3 aspect and everything on chain on the banking side aspect. And again, just from a regular ethos areas, it's like, yeah, let's just use this internet, use these tools, and really build around and create value towards this content in these local markets. You can't always forget about the little person, you know. You can't always forget. There's so much power in community, and if you look at the concept of Web3, it's all about community. It's all about community.
Those are some nice closing words. It's all about community, because if every community can establish trust, then things can go permissionless, I say, within a decentralized setup. And that's blockchain, for me, at least crypto and DeFi. So yeah, thanks for your time, Honcho, and thanks for your conversation. I think a lot of things you unpacked there, and we'll definitely keep track of Canza Finance.
Man, thank you, my friend.
Use it one day in the future.
For sure, man. Yeah, you're welcome. Anytime you're in West Africa, you just let me know, man.
I'll do that. Cheers, man.
Thanks.